Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Peak Property Performance. Today, you're stuck with just me because Drew is on a client site and they are going way over time, but clients prevail. So, still going to have a great show. The episode today is turning AI hype into time savings through a product builder's lens on manually intensive CRE work. I know it's a long title, but Greg Achenbach is joining us. He's the VP of Product at PredictAP. But first, I'm going to remind everybody, like, follow, subscribe, everything you do to help promote a show that you like. Send this episode to a friend, tell them they should be on it. If you think you should be on it, submit an application. We're trying to raise awareness to the fact that data and digital and commercial real estate is underutilized and undervalued. And the conversation is just sharing experiences and stories to help everybody improve in that regard. So, like I said, we're joined by Greg Achenbach, VP of Product at PredictAP. And what I like about Greg's perspective is that he is not coming in to sell us anything or sell the idea of AI, which we are all getting a little worn out about, especially in the trade show circuit, or any product or specific service. He's coming in as the person who has to turn a messy business problem into a real working product, explain it to real estate teams, and keep the conversation tied to measurable business outcomes. So, Greg, welcome to the show. Excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. All excited to be here.
Yeah, well, we talked about some things we wanted to get on the show, and the first one was like the work behind the AI. So, before we talk about AI, what world are you actually building in day to day, and what makes commercial real estate accounting such a practical place to apply automation?
Yeah, so PredictAP is a AI invoice ingestion and coding platform for real estate companies. So we've been building AI backed products for the last 6 years. And what makes commercial real estate like an interesting place for us to work in is just the volume of activity that's going on, especially in like the AP side of that. Right. So our whole goal with what we're trying to do with the product and with the company is utilize technology to help make AP more efficient in a real estate company. AP is kind of sloppy in any business, but when you add on like the magnitude of activity that will tend to happen in a real estate company, it just like is multiples more complicated than other areas. And so that's
Especially at the site level, like
yeah.
the plethora of bills and are they legitimate? And you roll that up to the portfolio, it is an arduous problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's just a lot of purchasing, a lot of repairing, a lot of services. There's just a lot of financial activity that happens at the real estate world, and it happens on a small scale. Like me, I own a home. I have a lot of bills to stay on top of. Let alone me being a single unit in a skyscraper in a suite of skyscrapers that are being managed. So it's a really interesting cross section of like practical and complex at the same time, and just volume, like very high volume of activities, which is tends to be the types of thing more advanced technology has always been good at, right? Like if you can see patterns that exist many times over, you're going to be able to build technology to help solve those, versus something that might only happen once or twice a year. It becomes harder to kind of like apply more advanced tech to, although that's becoming easier too.
Commercial real estate owners and operators and managers get thrown under the bus a lot about being slow to adopt. I'm guilty of saying it at times, but I want to flip the paradigm and be optimistic in this regard. Ask you, because you've been at it for, you said 6 years with this company. How's the industry's willingness to adopt more advanced technology changed over the past few years?
Yeah, I think it's been really fascinating to see how much that mentality has shifted, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years. So my background, I've been building products, software products, technology products for 20 plus years. I've worked in the healthcare space, I've worked in education tech, I've worked in marketing technology, now in my second go round in real estate. And when we started this company in 2020, I would say that, coming in and learning what the current tech stack is for a commercial real estate company wasn't as cutting edge as some of the other industries I've worked in, right? I would compare it a little bit more
Same
to
here, Greg. Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
I joined this industry 11 years ago, and this is the sixth company that I've done in my career, and I've been in various industries, and I was attracted to it because it was a laggard, and now that I've been in it 11 years, I'm super attracted to it because I'm seeing the adoption speed up. Like finally, like people are saying, yes, I'll do that. Like that being technology or digital, not yes, you're going to do a solution I'm selling, but 10 years ago they were like, nope, this is how we do it. We rent space. We build buildings, we buy buildings, we trade buildings, we rent space. And now they're thinking about everything that technology impacts in their business process and in their tenants' lives. It's been beautiful.
Yeah, no, and it's, we started with this idea, we started rolling it out, and folks were a little hesitant to use something. We didn't even use the term like AI for a while. We were using machine learning because it's like this specific piece of tech that we were using. And and I get it. Once you start to talk to people, the like real estate reminds me a lot of healthcare, where there's a lot of adversity to risk because of the pain that it can cause, right? So healthcare systems highly regulated, lots of bad things can happen if your like the medical records system goes down, or you can't
Whew.
perform surgery. Like I've when I worked in that space, that was like the most stressful experience I ever had, right? Because like you've got people's lives in
Risk
your
exposure is
hands.
much
Yeah.
higher. You have to
And
admit. Yeah.
yeah, is really high. But then you think about like real estate and like, trying to think on the behalf of their tenants and not having their tenants experience problems, right? Whether it's the power going out or trash collecting not being picked up, or, the people who are managing, especially on like the residential side, have a lot of responsibility on behalf of their tenants. And so they are going to be really risk adverse as well, to make sure that they're not picking some fly by night tech that's going to, thinking about financial software, like they don't want to put the tenant experience at risk because a piece of technology is not doing what it said it would do to make things easier. So, at first there was a lot of, overcoming we had to do around that. But I would say definitely the last 2 or 3 years, it's just switched, and people are coming to us looking for more advanced technology to do their jobs easier. And so it's been really nice to see the evolution. Now it's just like any other industry I've worked in that's been a little bit more, people want what's new, what's proven. I think there's still a lot of, risk adverseness around something, might seem to be temporary or not real. But I think once you've been in the space for a while, you've got a name, you've got a track record. We're lucky to have some very well-known clients that can advocate on our behalf. Then people are a lot more willing to feel like, yeah, this sounds like it works. We need to up our game. Let's give it a shot. So it's been a lot easier talk track lately.
Yeah, we've experienced the same evolution. A young man I mentored for a decade, who's a marketing guru, different industry, nothing to do with commercial real estate. He taught me years ago that the difference between a problem unaware market and a problem aware market is the problem aware market is at least a customer prospect. The problem unaware market, unless you have deep pockets and you're $1 billion company, you cannot educate and change their mind. The market has to. So we didn't spend, I told you I've been in this one 11 years, but OpticWise is 24 years old, I think. But we didn't spend any time in the problem unaware market. We went to the problem aware, and something happened a couple of years after the pandemic, and maybe the AI wave, maybe it was about a year ahead of that, people started to say, But the second point I wanted to bring up, and this is one that I'm passionate about, our listeners hear me vent on this all the time, but I want to hear your take on it, is the concept of don't buy AI, find the bottleneck. Look at the process first, folks. Don't just buy AI. So my question is, how should commercial real estate owners and operators think about using AI to solve a business problem instead of just buying something because it has AI on the label? Like, I went to a trade show. I go to a lot of trade shows, but the last 5 I've been at, your AI partner, your CRE AI, and it's point solutions using AI. I'm not saying they aren't using AI, but the owner is not actually using AI, they're buying it. So how could they think about using AI? And I'm going to shut up, I promise, to solve a business problem from your perspective, maybe digital architecture, or give us a success story. I don't care whether it's around AP or not, but where somebody in some industry looked at their own process, applied AI, rather than just bought it from somebody saying it included AI.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, being the product nerd, the thing I'm still getting used to is people just slapping a generic term to mean really specific things, right? So AI has been a phrase that's been around forever, and it's really just like a marketing umbrella for a suite of pretty advanced technology. And then there are specific subcomponents of it. So it's been fascinating to me that, like, and it's also kind of dangerous too, because folks will latch on to, certain people will think of AI purely in this like conversational experience, because that's what they're used to interacting with in their personal lives. And, that's like a flavor of an AI type product. There are things like, really small things that folks don't think about. Like, if you're typing a name on your phone, you're an email, it's auto correcting it. Well, that's really early on. Machine learning, pattern recognition, that's a form of AI. So I think people have just started to slap the marketing term on everything, and now people have like AI mandates to be using it. And so I don't think, I think nothing has changed from why you would buy software products for any reason over the last 20, 30, 40 years, right? You're solving them to help run your business more efficient. I'm a similar to what you were saying around how you advise people in the product management development world. There's this theory that was developed by this Harvard business professor named Clayton Christensen called jobs to be done. And the whole premise around this, for like if you're building a software product, is no one wants to buy another product. What they want to do is have a job, right? So simpler way of explaining this, you don't need a drill, you need a quarter-inch hole, right? So like it's the tool is the mechanism to achieve the outcome. So when I've talked to people, whether it's like family members who are trying to figure this stuff out, or friends of mine that aren't in the technology industry, they're trying to think about how they could be applying this stuff to their professions, to take a step back and think about like, where are you or the people that you're working with spending time where you don't think they should, right? What are the lower value tasks that are just eating up a ton of people's time and stopping them from getting to the more important things, right? So just like why PredictAP focuses on invoice processing right now as like the starting point of what our platform does, is because it's a problem that everybody has, and there at the time had been no real solid solution for it, right? There were partial technical solutions, like simple OCR scanning, or people just paying to ship this off to other people to deal with. And what, you think about, like, it's a really simple thing, but what if you don't pay your bill on, right? Like, we talked a little bit about this earlier, like a real estate company, the ramifications of not getting this invoice paid on time can be huge if you're not paying attention. So very practical thing. Also, think about how do a AI type product or AI backed product is going to work where there's real business pain and there's also data for it to consume, right? So all of
I
the,
learned early
yeah.
on that you could automate almost everything, but there's no return on most of it. Like you only need to automate where there's legitimate gain somewhere. To just go automate is a waste of time and money. AI enables automation for so many things, and we see a lot of people spending a lot of time and a lot of hours on things that aren't really a problem, unlike, accounts payable, of course. But I want to inject one point, because we put this in the book too, in a way, the Peak Property Performance book in the appendix. We said, what is AI? And I learned a very high level years ago in an MIT executive class about AI strategy, and that AI is really a three-legged stool. I mean, I'm going to bucketize these things, right? There's natural language processing, which is the autocorrect you mentioned, which is what lets us have transcriptions and all kinds of other powerful tools, but it lets us communicate with the machine in a way we understand. Before, we had to rely on coders, like to type a certain, Cobalt or whatever, Fortran, or like I'm dating myself by those languages, of course, but Python, for instance. Now we can just speak to it and it can understand what we want and go do it. So that's natural language processing. The other one's machine learning. I know that your solution is heavy in machine learning, but that has been around decades. Like that part of AI is nowhere near new. We've been using that for pattern recognition and finding anomalies and algorithms and correlations for 25 years that I know of. IBM started doing that when they did Watson, that beat the chess master. They were using machine learning then. And last one's robotic process automation, RPA. So we're actually seeing a lot of RPA come into commercial real estate through things like robotic cleaners, for instance, but they're collecting all kinds of data and other automation. So you can have software RPA and physical robots as well. So I wanted to interject that to the audience that maybe new and hadn't heard our understanding of AI. Keep it a high level. We're not here to talk about how to do AI. We're talking about how to apply AI and what data is needed. So I wasn't trying to steer your answer, but
Yeah, all good.
I'll
Yeah.
take it in a conversation, right? But when somebody says to you, to shift it back to you, we need to do AI, Greg, or what do you think they're actually missing? Like when they broadly say we need to do AI, like you mentioned a second ago, companies have an AI mandate. We have to do AI. Management says I have to do AI. What are they missing? What are they actually seeking?
Yeah, I think it's all like there's a never ending, and boy, will never end, like journey to make your business run as efficiently as possible, right? So if you are, go back 10, 15, 20 years ago, like you need a CRM. Why do you need a CRM? Well, you need a CRM to be able to stay on top of, all the data about the customer that you're managing, whether it's a tenant, a business, or whatever, commercial product. You need a CRM, that was a big thing. I remember this was like, dating myself a little bit. I remember when CRMs were the thing every business had to start adopting, and then needed to go from, being locally hosted to being in the cloud. Why? Like better connectivity, better access. Like there's always been this drive, at least, since, computers had existed, to like use technology to, make your business run more efficiently. I think what we're going through right now is the latest wave. I think the thing that, is like, I was coming out of college when the .com era, the first .com bust happened, and then the rise of the internet that, like, came out of that. And what's going on right now reminds me a lot of what was going on then, where you have like this really exciting, like, new type of way to make your business more effective, and people are trying to figure out what that means, right? So like everybody needed to have something in the cloud, or everyone needed to be online, or like right now, like AI, you need to use AI tools to make your business more efficient. So largely agree with that. But if you're just scattershot trying thing, which, I've seen some folks do, versus take a step back and be like, okay, well, like what are the actual bottlenecks? Which is something you brought up, like, where are the big bottlenecks in my company? Let's start with that, because ultimately you're going to spend money, and these things are not getting cheaper to run too, right? That's a whole other conversation we could have around like these more widely available AI products. All of a sudden, the price tag's starting to significantly increase on them.
They got to
So
pay for those data centers.
yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to pay for the data centers. And so, it's going to end up costing more than you think, right? In a lot of these implementations of tech. So, like, what do you start small, start practical, start with something you can actually measure the result, right? So, if you're just slapping it on, I'm going to throw a chatbot on my website so people can interact with me and I don't have to personally answer it. It's like, okay, great. But like, why? Why would you want to do that? Is that the biggest problem that you have? Like, if whether you're a CFO or a CTO or a PM or whatever you are, like, try to think local, right? Like, what is the thing within my world that's causing me the most pain that I could probably apply technology to, and then actually measure the impact that it's having? I think that's something that a lot of folks kind of jump and just assume it's going to happen, right? Instant ROI. I'm going to slap this piece of AI on my whatever, and then, ROI.
Check the box for being AI
Yeah.
centric,
Yeah. And, then you get hit with $100,000 bill from this tool that, like, because, like, surprise
Token
usage,
usage.
token usage. And like, what am I actually trying to achieve with it? I think that's the first thing, is like, start small, start simple, and also start with, once you think about that, I think it also will help you think about, the type of tool or service that you really should be looking to latch onto. Like, there are general purpose tools that do general purpose things really well. There are hyper specific tools that do specific tasks significantly better than general purpose tools. So, not only will thinking about the pain, like, more locally, and to how you're going to measure the results, it's going to help you select the right type of tool too. Like, these things are fascinating. I've been using this stuff for years. Not everything's a multi-tool. Not everything is going to perform to the way that you want it to, or the cost of trying to alter a general purpose tool to be something more hyper specific is going to be wildly more expensive than buying something that was purposely built for that purpose.
I couldn't agree more. So, why do you think the commercial real estate industry gets so tripped up by terminology like AI and machine learning and conversational AI, agentic AI, and chasing titles and handles versus actually solving problems?
Well, I think there's a lot of marketing dollars being spent from technology companies to put a lot of these, things out in the world, for people to latch onto. It's also, I think I said this before, like, we're in a really, really interesting time, and like the pace at which technology is evolving right now is unlike anything I've ever seen.
It's
Right.
meteoric. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so
and you don't wanna be left behind, right? Like, not o like, you don't wanna be left behind on your business, and even personally. Like, you don't wanna fall behind for whatever you are trying to achieve personally over the course of your career. You wanna make sure that you're staying current with this stuff as well, right? I think that's a being in the SaaS, business world for a while. I think the personal drivers that people have for making business purchases are often forgotten. But, you don't wanna get left behind personally. You don't want your company to get left behind. Everyone's got competition. Everyone's worried about the people they're competing with getting ahead of them. So I think just the volume of activity, like, you can't go onto a news source today and not read something about AI. And so I
yeah,
understand, like,
that's true.
why people are fascinated by this, right? Like, I can open up LinkedIn right now just to go check on, if there's something, interesting out there. And my feed's gonna be very biased because it's a lot of technical people, but like 9 out of every 10 posts, regardless, even like all the real estate folks I'm connected with, it's all about AI right now. So, no one wants to be left behind. And I think that's why there's just like a driver to, and a rush to make sure that you're not.
Drew and I both have a newsletter we publish on LinkedIn. And the whole conversation is not AI. It's about translating technical or market impacts from technology to owners and operators and managers. Like it's how we're genuinely not allowed to sell anything. It's how, okay, this acquisition happened. Why is this good or bad for the clients? This company might be saying this, but this is what we believe is actually happening. So this trend is not, may or may not be good for you. So I try to translate a lot more than pour gas on that fire of, I so cool. Do I love AI? Absolutely. Do I use it? All the time, but only when I know the process or the bottleneck, to go back to your question. So how do you help clients, employees, friends? It doesn't matter. Don't take off your PredictAP hat. How do you help anybody else outside of the room you're sitting in right now focused on features, on outcomes instead of features, so they don't fall prey to the AI marketing hype that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly sit down, and I try to talk to them about like what are the things that are really getting in the way from you or your company, your department, whatever, like being more efficient. Like what are the things that like where are you or your team like spending more time than they should, right? So what's the thing that you wish you could just make easier? It kind of start with
Yeah.
some simple questions like
Love
that.
that
And
question. Yeah.
and then boil it down, right? So if I am talking to someone who is a product manager and they're trying to release a new product and they're getting hung up on synthesizing product research, right? So like I went out, I talked to 100 people, I've got all this stuff. It's just an insane amount of information. How do I look at it all? How do I retain it? How do I categorize it? How do I find a through line between all this stuff? Like, okay, great. Well, have you thought about using something like this that can speed up that kind of process? Or whether it's somebody who's having a hard time, like one of the things we hear a lot about from our customers is like really finding valuable information from the mountain of data that they sit, right? So every real estate company is sitting on a mountain of data, like whether it's like the financial data,
Oh, I know. We
the
help
like
them
the
get their arms around it. And instead of hugging Jello, they actually turn it into a data repository that's valuable.
Yeah, and so, like, how do you act on that? Like, what are the things that you like, the questions that, like, you wanna be able to answer that typically might take, like, a human looking at, like, if I wanna know how many of my invoices had late fee on it, like, okay, like, how do you do that other than sit down and literally look at everything one by one? It's like, "Alright, well, you can use a piece of technology, it's specifically designed to help with that type of thing." And so, I talk a lot about that, and I think it's really good for people to, switch gears from like your personal realm to your business realm. Like if once you kind of wrap your head around where's the big time sucks, where do I wish the problems could just go away, you can try some very simple off the shelf things. Like I'm a big fan of like prototyping or trying things before you kind of jump into the deep end. So I'll usually give folks advice on try this, try that, try it this way, see if it's more efficient. And then once it locks in, like, yeah, they're like technology can't solve this problem for me. If you're thinking about it in like more of the business realm than the personal, then you got to do the really fun thing and start thinking about stuff like data security, right? So as great as a lot of these tools are, what are the guarantees that you have in place that your data, which you are obligated to keep secure on behalf of your clients, is going to be kept secure and it's not going to necessarily benefit somebody else from the use of some tool?
Well, that's a perfect segue because in my brain, I have the whole idea of talking about how to actually use AI without losing control. Like, well, I guess the question is, what does safe AI adoption look like for commercial real estate teams that handle sensitive operating, customer, vendor, financial, it could be LP, it could be all kinds of things, information. Like I'm outside of just the PMS system, of course, because you have tenant leases and tenant information on there and very deep PII. Let's talk about it from the rest of the operating or the property or the portfolio data. Like what does safe AI adoption look like? And tell some people what they should be asking their team or their vendors about, like just some high bars without diving in deep about standards and specifications. Don't geek out. Keep them at 100,000 feet.
Yeah. Well, I think so when a commercial real estate company makes the decision to sign an agreement with a property management system, right? So I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get myself in trouble for promoting or under promoting people we might work with, but there's a lot of, everyone's got a PMS system in place. There's a bunch of them out there. Part of the procurement process for that is like, I'm obligated to keep my company's financial data secure and my clients' data secure, right? Whether I'm a
Absolutely.
an asset manager, a data center, or, or multifamily residential. Like I've got a lot of data that some of which is relevant to me, some of which is relevant to my customers. I need to make sure that's secure, that can't get leaked out for all the right reasons. There's a very methodical purchase process that goes with purchasing one of those systems. That same type of mentality needs to get applied to any of these ancillary tools that you're using. How do I know that common name off the shelf, AI tool that I'm seeing commercials for when I'm watching baseball games isn't going to, like, yes, there are terms and conditions of like keeping your data secure. There's the silos and stuff like that. But like everything you're doing is training their model. Like everything that you are doing, all of the interactions that you are having with these tools are training those tools to be better. So in an essence, like, yes, you're going to connect it to your data, but also like the secret sauce of you and how you work is going into that product. And your competitors might also be using that same fancy name off the shelf general purpose AI tool. And there's a lot of blowback starting to happen within the technical space right now. There's a lot of news articles coming around this where people are getting a little hesitant to continue their company's widespread usage of these big name products because there's a fear that like what is the benefit that we're giving up by giving all of our IP into this? Even if the data is secure and all that, the questions that I'm asking it are going to allude to things that are hyper specific to my business and how my business operates to make these general purpose tools better.
How would you advise an owner operator, commercial real estate, of course, to think about the difference between a general purpose AI tool, like you said, the one you see during a baseball game, and a purpose built secure solution? And then I'll add to that versus building it myself, because we help a lot of clients build their tools without having to do the gory AI piece, but build it in a way that the LLM never gets their data. You used to use the LLM for what they're good at, but it sits here in a brain, right? In the property brain or the portfolio brain. So that is where they could look, you would have a repository of all of the AP you need to run your function. And you as PredictAP could still use it. That would be a specific tool leveraging the strengths of an LLM without giving up the weaknesses. So how would you think differently? How would you advise people differently?
Yeah, I think it gets into the problem that I'm trying to solve, and is there a tool out there that it's really focused on solving that specific problem and solving it in a way that I can sleep well at night, knowing that all of the things that my team, like I've hired really good people to do, really good jobs. I don't want that, like the wherever you are, I think a lot of the secret sauce of what makes a business successful is the people that are actually in there doing the work, right? Like there's a lot of, you hire really good people, really good things happen. How you interact with each other, how these people perform their jobs is like really important to the success of every business. So how do I protect the data, protect the uniqueness of like my team and their skill sets in a way that like it's in my house, it's never going to leave my house. How do I get guarantees around that?
Yeah. And
Um,
if you need that, we can absolutely do that. But it's a matter of need first.
Yeah, and then the whole like build versus buy conversation is a fascinating one because there are times where I feel like you've got, a one-off kind of simple use case that's not, extremely complicated. Like you could probably, in a safe and secure way, find a general piece of purpose technology and go ahead and do that, right? So if I want to know, I'm a big baseball fan. So if I want to have like, some daily alerts kind of sent to my phone about the teams that I care about or the players that I'm watching, or I follow minor league baseball too, like general purpose information that I can, like that was a fun little hacky thing for me to do on the side. There's no risk
Yeah.
involved in doing that. That allowed me to, have a little fun side project with my high school age son. Now that's a one-off thing. If am trying to think about solving a daily problem that my team has, I need to think about like building it in house. Do you have the team and the expertise to actually, building software products is easy today, right? Like these tools that are out there that allow
It's too easy.
non-engineers to be engineers, like you can put together something real quick and it's going to work. But are you doing it in a secure way, right? Like if I'm not a software engineer that's used to having to go through the security checklist as part of my code deployment, like
Or
do I
QC deployment. Yeah.
yeah, like, how do I know I'm not leaking stuff out to the world that I don't know about? And the other thing is like, can I keep up to date? These tools are evolving rapidly. And so if I spend a month building something that's really good and the underlying LLMs that I'm using have like totally been overhauled 2 weeks later, how am I staying on top of that? How am I going to make sure that the underlying tech's not getting depreciated? Because now that's the other thing is these providers are depreciating the LLMs much more rapidly than they used to. So you need a software development methodology behind all this stuff. And also, is it worth my time? Like, is the best use of me and my time for my company to be building these one-off things? Can I do it securely? Can I do it at scale? Like if you think about, invoice processing, how am I going to continually train a piece of technology with the hundreds of thousands of invoices that come in every year? Is that something I can just do on my MacBook Air that I'm sitting on right now versus, a cloud solution that was built to handle some of this stuff in a safe and secure way? So there's times and there's places for all of these things, but I think when you start to think about the stuff that's touching critical information that is, going to be using technology that's going to evolve pretty quickly, is that something that your team is equipped to be able to handle in the same way? Or is it a more efficient manner, just go buy a subscription to a tool that was purpose built for these types of things?
Some of that I can keep bringing up the book, but it's a process, and I think it applies whether you're buying technology or not. But when you engage vendors as a commercial real estate owner or operator, we highly recommend you understand where the vendor's coming from. Who owns the data that my system's generating, right? I'm buying a service from you. Does that include the system? Who owns the system? Is it a software license? Whatever. But more importantly, where's the data? Are there any physical devices? Who owns those and who manages and maintains those, supports them, etc.? But Mr. or Mrs. Vendor, who owns you? Like you brag about these customers, do they own a piece of you? Because I see a lot of that happen in commercial real estate too. It's a spin out, or they'll be on a panel and this vendor is bragging about their largest customer. Well, their largest customer owns 30% of them. They don't sit there and say that, right? So of course they have great success stories, but it was not arm's length transaction by any means. Now, I'm not saying all of them. I'm just saying I see it very commonly that the people on the panels have the deepest pockets to pay to be the thought leaders versus the people that are just actually sitting down with a customer and solving a real problem and not spending much marketing dollars. So there's a whole page in the book about questions. It's supply chain management. It's not technology. Ask like, what's your vendor's roadmap? Like, what if I want this feature? Do they fit into it? Rather than ask them to build it, tell them this is where you're going. How can you meet me there? Instead of following their roadmap, steer the roadmap. Even if you're a small customer, the right vendor will say, yeah, we do that, or we can do that, or give me 3 months until I do. So we're a big advocate for driving the bus versus just buying the seat. Maybe that is a gym college analogy, right? Right butts, right seat. But I think that what you just said a second ago piqued my interest about it because yes, the large LLMs are getting very expensive, but if you build your own tool, it's really arduous to keep up with it because the person who built it's probably getting promoted in your own organization and they're not going to sit in that seat anymore. And then they have to train somebody. So then the problem can get exacerbated. And the largest clients we consult with, maybe we do recurring services, maybe we don't, but we consult with, they have their own teams. And it's interesting how some of them stay completely away from certain functions. Data science team here might be 15 people deep, large company, of course, anomalies, one top 10 in the world. And over here, they're not developing the software, they're buying it. And then you get a medium-sized firm that's developing the software and has no data science team. Yet they both have exquisite results because they looked at the bottleneck, because they asked the right questions, because they know where their data is and it's not leaking and it's secure and all the PII is locked down and compliant. So there's not one way, build versus buy. There's a million ways, but just know which one you want and don't bend any corners because of somebody's marketing is my advice.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree. I think, do what makes sense for your business. It's the ability to spin up these purpose-built agents to perform specific tasks is fascinating and actually saves people time. What happens when you've got 40 of these agents doing like who's monitoring them, who's keeping them up? Like you said, like the person that enabled their team to be more efficient is likely the one that's moving up and beyond or out because of their skill set. So this thing that was built 6 months ago, is it still working? Is it still adding value? Is it still secure? Those are big things that folks need to keep on top of. There are horror stories around people trying to apply some of these general purpose things to like real world real world scary things like legal debates and things going awry. So, it's like the Spider-Man quote, like great power comes with great responsibility. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And, everyone's beholden to certain standards and regulations. So you should experiment with them safely, figure out the things that are safe to do, on your own, and then partner up with people that can do this stuff efficiently, securely, and stay up to speed rapidly. And I think your point around making sure that the people you're partnering with are actually listening to their customers is super, super important. There are, people who are letting the technology tail wag the dog versus actually sitting down and, consistently talking to their customers around the pains that they've got to make sure that the things that they're evolving are actually continuing to solve those pains more efficiently rather than just flashier.
I think I could sum it up by saying buy the purpose and the objective and the methodology, not the sizzle and sexiness of the acronyms that are marketing deep and marketing intensive. It's easy to fall in love with, oh, I'm going to buy that and we're set. But I will point this commercial real estate audience back to pre-pandemic where prop tech was huge. Prop tech was going to solve everything, and then the pandemic came along and now you don't need leasing agents anymore. Now you don't need this, and there's these smart thermostats and oh, yada, yada, yada. Well, all the promises didn't come true. Some of them did. Like the ones that did are still around, but just like you mentioned, the dot-com boom, we had a prop tech boom. I mean, prop tech bust is the consolidation and failures and not funding of VC rounds 3 and 4, and PEs buying them up for tool solutions instead of strategic acquisitions is happening because it was overdone. And people fell in love with the idea of, oh, I can buy prop tech. Prop tech is still needed, mind you, but they may or may not use AI. But if you buy prop tech, you're not using AI to better your business. You're buying from a vendor that should better your business. They're using AI. It's a big difference.
No, it is. And you go back to like the adage that like VCs used to use, which like you invest in the people and the problem and not the technology. So if you're out there evaluating a piece of AI tech and you get a salesperson that tells you something you want to do isn't on the roadmap or it can't do it, that's a really good signal that that person's being honest and actually cares about what you're doing and what you're trying to solve for versus someone that's just like nodding along and then you buy a piece of vaporware. So I think you can learn a lot about, like the actual validity and stability of these things that you're buying just from the quality of the experience you're having, like getting your foot at the door with these people. Is high quality, honest salespeople are going to point to a really good company culture, and that's going to bleed into the leadership team and the thought that goes behind how the products are built and all that stuff.
Yeah, I tell our team here all the time, the last thing we want is a customer that bought a promise we can't do. Like, so if we can't do it, be the first to say no. Like, introduce the solution to them to a company that can. Like, even if it's a competitor, say no, we don't do that. They do. Like, we don't want to if it's not in our core, of course. But ancillary business might look good for revenue, but that's vanity. It doesn't look good for the strategic growth of a business. And I know that because I've been a lifetime entrepreneur. Like, you go chase the revenue versus chase the solution. The customers teach us what they want, but we still have to stay focused in our lane. Like, nobody can do everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and commercial real estate in general is it's really large market, but it's very tight knit, right?
It's
So
very tight. Yeah.
word spreads very rapidly on people who are burning bridges or people who aren't living up to their promise. So
Well, it's
yeah.
large by asset class. It's small by number of companies and people in the industry. So, and that was one of the things that attracted me to it too, because we fit right in there. So, I like that. Greg, this has been awesome, and I'm sure we could talk another hour, but we might lose some people if we do. So, at this point in the show, we shift from talking about the industry or technology or data and shift it to you. So we call this the extra floor and the lightness of commercial real estate. And it's just 3 questions, answer it. And it's just you, just off the cuff. Doesn't have to be conversational. Number 1, what's the best piece of career or life advice you've ever received?
So I've gotten asked that a couple times. I always say I had a boss years ago that told me the key to being successful is start to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So, you're going to get put in situations that you don't know how to address or what to do, and just put your head down and go through them. And then at the end of it, you kind of realize what I did right, what I did wrong. But the next time that gets thrown at me, I'm going to do it better. So I've spent a lot of, the early part of my career, like seeking out uncomfortable situations for me to put in just to see what I can learn out of them.
Yeah, I love it. I won't chime in, but you nailed what I was going to say. So I'll stop because I said it's not conversational. Number 2, what's one habit or practice that consistently makes you more effective?
Um, I think particularly as I've gotten older and iffer, and I've never been an agile or flexible person. I find that like I have a lot more clarity and energy when I like exercise the first thing in the morning. It's a really stupid, simple thing, but the older I get, the more I realize that that's kind of like a reset for my body and my mind, and like I attack the day much more efficiently. Like after I've done some level of exercise in the morning.
Sounds stupid. I think it's perfect. Fitness is the fountain of youth. This one's really hard. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Um, I would say I would lean like I really hate to get up, right? Like waking up is like the hardest part of the day. Once I'm awake, I'm like good to go. So like I hate getting out of bed, but once the feet touch the ground, I feel like the first, between when I get up and lunchtime, I'm probably the most effective and whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish that day, whether it's, yard work or doing something with the kids. Like I get it, I get it done a lot more efficiently in the morning than if I'm up too late.
Well, how can our listeners contact you? They'll be on the show notes too, but for those that aren't looking at the show notes, how would you prefer if somebody wants to reach out?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's the best way to find me. You can go to the PredictAP website, find my LinkedIn like info there. I don't know if it'll be in the show notes here or not, but that's
Oh,
probably
it'll be
the
on there. Yeah, we'll put that
yeah.
up there.
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the
All
best
right.
way to get a hold of me because I get way too many emails to keep up with. So that's usually the
Yeah,
best
every
way.
episode has its own page and all the contact information, the highlights, the full transcript, everything's up. You'll have your own show page. Well,
Great.
thank you, Greg. And thanks to our listeners. Again, like I said at the beginning, be sure to like, follow, subscribe. We're always looking for quality people to be on the show. So put your hand up or tell your friend to put their hand up if they would like to be on the show. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Peak Property Performance.